Are you lost in the chaotic whirlwind of day-to-day busyness? Do you yearn for a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in your life? Welcome to Be You, Your Story, Your Purpose, the podcast dedicated to empowering women on their journey of self-discovery and finding their true purpose through their own story. I'm your host, Brenda Simmons. Welcome, my friends, to the podcast. I'm so glad to be with you today. I have been thinking a lot lately about universal laws. What do I mean by this? Universal laws are the ones that are everywhere. They affect everything that we do. And if we don't understand them, then we may not be able to take advantage of them and use them for our benefit. It's one thing to not know about these laws. It's another to know about them, but not really do anything with them. And then there's that last level of being able to leverage these laws. And this is what I'm talking about. How do you take these laws, understand them, and then leverage them to propel us into something that we want to become, something that we want to achieve, into a life that we want to live with purpose? So, for example, one universal law is gravity. We know that gravity exists. It affects everything around us. It affects every single person. It is one thing to understand about gravity, and it's another to leverage that. So let's say that you're standing on a ledge. Well, depending on the height of that ledge, if you step off of that, you could really hurt yourself. So that understanding what gravity is going to do, it's going to make you fall, helps us then to be safe. And we could even by not obeying that law of gravity, it could it could hurt us, and potentially we could lose our lives. And so it has dire consequences not understanding the effects of gravity. Now, what's interesting though is gravity is that very same law that makes flight possible. And this is what I mean by leverage. If you don't have gravity, you don't have the ability to fly. Now, you may say, well, what about flying out in space? Well, that's not really flying. That's more like thrusting, because you're not moving through, you're not using the force of gravity and to get you somewhere else. You're just thrusting yourself through space. So it's totally different. You don't have wind like we do here on Earth. That, again, is caused by gravity. It is amazing how we can take these same laws, the laws that could potentially hurt us if we don't heed to the rules of the law, and then use those same laws to bring us something that is full of joy and wonder and so much fun. So we have our choice then. We can disobey the law, where we might get hurt, or it might even cause dire consequences. We could passively obey them, whereby we are not going to experience any negative consequences, but we're not really gaining anything out of it. Or we can leverage them, like I've talked about with flight. So what are these laws of success? What do I mean by these universal laws? Well, I'm going to go over 10 of them today. And I'm going to do this in a 2-part series. So today I'm going to do 5 of them. And then the week after, I'm going to share the other 5. And the reason why I'm doing this is because there's a lot of content here. And I want to give you the space to really digest what I'm saying. Do some research on what they are. Take some time to journal and to really understand, where are you at in obeying these laws and how can you leverage them in your own life. So I really want you to take that time. And so I'm going to give you these laws and how to leverage them in 2 parts. So let's go to the first one. The first law is the law of transmutation. Now, this law states that everything is either coming into or going out of physical form. It starts with a vision. You don't really enact the law of transmutation if you don't have a vision of what you want, if you don't have a goal. So it depends, our ability to use it depends on the kind of focus and the kind of effort that we put into it. So let me give you an example. When I was starting out in real estate several years ago, I just had my first listing. So a listing is where you are representing the sellers. And I really wanted to get some clients off of this listing, because you learn that, if you have listings, your ability to gain more clients is a little bit easier than if you're working with a buyer. And so I really wanted to make this come to pass. I wanted this to come into physical form, these new clients based off of my listing that I had. And so what I did is I wrote down a caricature. I wrote down the qualities of this new buyer that I was going to have based off, or this new client I was going to have based off of this listing. And I wrote down, where they were from and their family situation and why they were moving. And, I even had them, they were buyers and they were coming in from out of state and they lived in a small town just like I did out in Missouri. And I had all of these different qualities. And it was so fascinating to me because maybe like a week or two later, I got a phone call off of my real estate sign out in the front yard. And it was this guy wanting to look at the home. And so I set it up and I opened up the door and told him a little bit about the listing that I had. And we got to talking. And it was so amazing because these people, they ended up becoming my clients. They fit my list of qualities that I had written down. Like it was so fascinating. And I never said anything to them while I was working with them, but I was so fascinated at how closely related their situation was to what I had written down. And so it really was a testimony to me that this law works. And the story doesn't even end there. So this is so cool. So they're coming from Ohio and the wife had a lot of physical ailments and it was really trying for her to go to all of the homes. And so the plan was that he would come out with me and we'd look and then we'd bring her back to the ones that he really liked. But the real estate market was such that if she wasn't there to see it at that time, they would lose their opportunity to even try for it. And so they got really, really discouraged because they were dealing with her physical problems. They were really struggling with trying to find the right home. They were trying to, or not trying to, but they were competing with many other buyers because the real estate market was super crazy. And they got super down and super depressed. And so what I did is I said, let's make a list of everything that you really want in a home. And so we did that. And so we said, and I do this with my clients always anyway, but I kept having to come back to that list with them. And I said, remember, this is what you want, and we're going to find this home. And it was so amazing because this home was found. This home was exactly what they needed. It was exactly in the location that would make them comfortable, and they love their home. And every time I see them, they comment about how much they love their home and how it was such a miracle finding this home. And really, it all goes back to that law of transmutation, knowing what you want and then leveraging that law to actually get it. So how do you actually leverage the law of transmutation? What are the steps to actually making that work for you? Well, number one, you need to know what you want. You've got to have your vision. You've got to sit down and write out, like in pen and paper, what is it that I want? What does it look like? What are the characteristics of it? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? What is it, all of the things that are pertinent to what you want. Write everything down. And then take the time to visualize that clearly with detail every single day. Imagine yourself with that item, with that physical item or that relationship or whatever it is. Imagine yourself in that situation as if it's already there. And then make sure that your thoughts and your emotions and your actions are in alignment with that vision. You don't want to have a vision and then diss on it, right? And say, oh, that's never going to happen. Or, oh, I'm so dumb. I don't have the ability to do that. No, you cannot do that. That which you want to come to pass, to come into physical form, has to be in alignment with your thoughts. And because your thoughts are going to generate your emotions, will generate your actions. And if they are not all in alignment with what you want to accomplish, then you are not going to be able to get what you want. And so that's how you leverage that law of success. So that's number one. The second law is the law of relativity. And this says that nothing is good or bad until it is compared to something else. Now, we have a natural tendency to compare ourselves to other people. We do this all the time. At least I do. So I compare my my losses to other people's wins. I compare my weaknesses to other people's strengths. And if you really think about it, that is super, super unfair, because when we compare ourselves to other people, we're comparing more than just what we're seeing. And there's so much there that we don't see that's under the surface. And so the only thing that we can compare ourselves to justly and fairly is ourselves. So the way in which we leverage this law is by comparing our current situation with a situation in the past, or comparing our current situation with something that will propel us in a positive way towards the future. The benefit about that is, as we look towards the future and we look to where we want to be, it gives us hope because we can see progress that we have made. Well, and let's take the situation where maybe you're worse off, right? So again, you're worse off because you're comparing it to what has happened before. But then we can also go back and say, hey, it was good before, it can be good again. How do I need to get myself there? So by using the law of relativity in the right way, we can maintain a perspective and we can maintain gratitude. It helps us when we need to identify some course corrections, like I talked about. It helps us to make our journey towards our goals a little bit more manageable and a little bit more motivating, because we're able to leverage that law of relativity in a way that benefits us. The third law of success, or the third law of prosperity, is the law of vibration. I really, really love this law. And I remember when I first learned about this, I was like, no way, that is so cool. So this law states that everything is in a state of vibration, and that vibration is a medium for transferring signals. It's a medium of communication. So if you have a higher vibration, that means you are physically and mentally and energetically opening yourself up to the world around you. And what I mean by that is both the seen world and the unseen world. So there's unseen would be like energies and different things like that. And I know that sounds a little bit woo-woo, but it's actually a thing. So when you have a lower vibration, you really shut down, and it makes it so that we are unable to see opportunities around us and to make relationships with other people, because we're so focused inward. And so that high vibe helps us to go outward, the low vibe makes us go inward. I experienced this a lot when I was suffering from depression many years ago. I remember sitting in church, and it was so weird because it was almost like an existential experience, where you're kind of looking at yourself and you're noticing what you're doing, but you're not understanding why, right? So this happened to me. So I'm sitting there in class, and I'm sitting like in a fetal position. I'm leaning forward. I've got my legs up close to me, and I'm leaning forward and kind of hugging my legs, my shins, and I thought, isn't it interesting that I literally cannot sit upright. Like, I just didn't have it in me to sit upright and just even open my body up physically to sit normally. Like it was almost like I felt compelled to sit in that fetal position. Super, super interesting. And I realize now that it's because I had such a low vibe, because I was so deeply depressed. I literally caved in on myself and moved into that fetal position, because I did not have the vibe or the energy to open myself up to the world, even in a sitting position. So look at your body language. Your body language is going to tell you a whole lot about what kind of vibe you have. Are you more closed in? Are your shoulders hunched forward? Are your arms inside? Are you hugging yourself? Or are you able to open up your arms and put your shoulders back and hold your head high, your body will tell you what your vibe is. So watch for that because it's so, so interesting. And we can learn so much from the way that our body moves. Another visual that I really like to look at, there's this video on YouTube, and I'll link the the website to that YouTube video. It's one of my favorite things, and it's so simple. So there's this piece of black paper, and it's sitting on a vibration plate. And then the person in the video is sprinkling salt. So you can see this white salt on this black piece of paper. And on this vibration plate is starting to move. And so this black paper on that plate starts to jiggle. And as it's doing so, the salt moves into different configurations. And at first, when the vibe is really low, like it's like a sound wave, right? And so when that vibration is really slow and low, that um the salt on the paper moves into a very defined pattern. And as that pattern starts off on that low level, it's very not loose, but it's simple. It's very, very simple. And then the higher you go on that vibration, the salt actually moves. And so there's actually a geometric representation of a vibration, right? And it's so fascinating. The higher you go, the more intricate and the more complicated that design is. And it really tells me that as our vibe, as that energy that flows out of us is a higher vibe, or the higher that it is, the more we have the ability to have complexities in our life. And those complexities look like relationships. Those complexities look like opportunities. They're positive life experiences. And so as we increase our vibe and open ourselves up to the world around us, we are able to have a more full and a more rich life. Albert Einstein said this. He said, "The significant problems we face in life cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them." So that means that if you are in a problem, the way isn't around that problem. The way is to find a different vibration that will pull you out of that problem. It's not ignoring the problem, it's dealing with it by changing your vibration. So, so interesting. So, how do we leverage the law of vibration? There's so many things that you can do. So, number one, you can do things that light you up, have hobbies that are exciting to you, or a career that just really lifts you up and you're so excited to go to every day. You can go to events, you can go on vacations. There's so many things that you can do to light yourself up and just put you in a place of levity, in a place of joy. You can celebrate, have fun, find the good things in a situation, even though that situation may not be exactly what you want. Find that good, find that silver lining in that. And then surround yourself with people who have the vibration that you want to have. When you surround yourself with that vibration, it can't help but affect you. And I don't know if you've been around somebody who is just really depressed all the time. That affects you. And I found that when I was depressed, it was a struggle for me to get out and to make friends and stuff because I just wasn't in that same vibe. Fast forward several years when my vibe has totally changed and it's so much easier to maintain those relationships. So find the people who have the vibration that you want and hang around them and match that vibration with them. So that's how you leverage the law of vibration. The fourth law is the law of restoration. Now, this is also called the law of attraction. And so you may have heard of that one more often. However, I think a better name for this is the law of restoration because it says that which you give is what you will receive, right? So the law of attraction, you're basically giving that energy, right? And so you're receiving the same thing. But really, it's a restoration of what you've already sent out to the world, right? And so you are restoring that which you've already given. The universe will always restore what you put out there. And usually it's going to restore it in a way that is stronger and in a more dramatic way. And here's the thing, you cannot separate that giving from that receiving. They are two sides of the same coin. I remember once my word of the year was to give, and I thought I'm just going to give, and I didn't understand that I had to receive also, and I didn't want to receive because I wanted to give. That was my focus, you know. And so I learned that year that it is just as important to receive as it is to give. So if you're giving, you're putting things out there into the universe, into your community, into your family, or whatever, you need to expect that you will receive at least what you give out, if not more. So this is, and that's a really important concept, that we have that expectation of receiving. It's not necessarily the focus, right? The focus is, we want to give, but understand that if we don't complete that cycle, it will affect our ability to give if we don't receive. And so expect that receiving, expect to be able to give what, or to receive what you give out in the world. So how do we leverage the law of restoration? Well, I think number one, you need to determine what your values are. Find your top 10. Go get a list of values and then narrow them down to the top 30, and then narrow those 30 down to your top 20, and then narrow those down to your top 10, and then put those top 10 into the order of what is my most important value to the 10th important value. As we are able to identify what we value, then we can evaluate what we're putting out into the universe. And if what we're putting out into the world doesn't match the values that are important to you, it's a good time to reevaluate. Because remember, we have to put out there what we want to receive. Have that end goal in mind. What is it that I want to receive? So what is it that I need to give out into the world? And as we do that and we align that up with the values and the things that are important to us, that is going to come back to us, and we will be able to enact that law of restoration and receive, even to a greater degree, that which we give away. All right, that's number 4. Number 5, and this is the last one that we're going to go over today, is the law of polarity. This law says that everything has an opposite, right? So think North Pole, South Pole, right? Everything has an opposite. And contained in every adversity is the seed of an equal positive benefit. So that gives us a lot of perspective, right? My daughter, she spent the second half of her senior year of high school. She actually graduated early, and she decided she wanted to have an adventure. And so she decided that she would teach English in China. And this was 2019. So this was right before COVID happened. And she went over to China, and man, it was hard. The food was different. She really struggled with the food. She just has always been attracted, or bugs have always been attracted to her. And so she gets bitten a lot. And it was so extreme. She's had bites all over her, and the living conditions weren't that great. It was super cold, and then it got super hot, and there was no way to regulate the temperature. The toilets weren't what she was used to out here. And so the living conditions were difficult for her to adjust to. And yet, she had the most wonderful experience. She was able to connect with those little Chinese children, and they are so adorable. Her pictures, I loved being able to FaceTime her and to be able to say hi to the kids that she was working with. She absolutely loved that experience. And even now, she looks back at that, and you know what? She doesn't remember that negative side of it. She remembers the children that she worked with. She remembers the relationships with the other teachers. She remembers the trips that they went on to see all sorts of different Chinese places. And she had so many wonderful experiences because she knew that, yeah, there's bad things, but there's also good things. And we have a choice that we can take to focus on one or the other. And so when we obey the law of polarity and we really leverage it, we understand that, yeah, there's good, but there's bad, but there's also good in things. And so we can try to find solutions in the negative things that happen to us. Something that I love is this saying, that which is in the way is the way. I love that. That which is in the way is the way because of the law of polarity. Because we know that in that way, in that difficult moment, is that seed of that positive benefit, is that seed of a solution that we can find to that problem. So don't try to find those anywhere else. Find it inside because it's all there because of the law of polarity. I want you to take these 5 laws. We had the law of transmutation, the law of relativity, the law of vibration, the law of restoration, and the law of polarity that we discussed today. Go back, listen to this again, and take some notes on it. How are you doing in relation to these laws? Now, remember, you can't really break the laws because they're universal. They don't break, they don't change, right? What we do is we break ourselves against them. That is something that I learned from Leslie Householder. And if you haven't read her book on, it's called Hidden Treasures, she talks a lot about these laws and how they work in our lives. So I recommend that book. She's absolutely, absolutely amazing. And use this space this week to really dive into how are you leveraging, or are you leveraging? And if not, how can you leverage these laws of success to get you to where you want to go? And with that, I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next week. Until next time, take care. Bye.
Celebrate your dreams, let them take flight, for you are a star, shining bright in every step you take.